here's the sacrificial story. So human beings have made sacrifices. It seems to be a standard practice all around the world. And in the biblical narratives, they would often sacrifice something of value, like a valuable animal.
Well, like a child. Let's start.
Well, look. I'm not making light of this. I know that human sacrifice was a part of this.
Yeah, but that's again. So just to give you a crib on where my mind goes here is human sacrifice is as old a religious precept as we know about.
Yes.
It's a cultural universal. The other sacrifices are derivations from it. Circumcision is a surrogate for the far more barbaric act of human sacrifice, and it answers every test you would put to it with respect to its archetypal significance, its compelling presence in stories across all cultures. But the horror is that it actually has taken place in all these cultures based on explicit beliefs in the presence of just
right. Well,
oppressive scientific ignorance.
Arthur Kessler used that as an argument for the essential insanity of humanity. Right?
No, but it's not just the insanity of humanity. It's the misapprehension of the causal structure of the cosmos. You don't know what controls the weather. Well, you don't know why people get sick. You think your neighbor is capable of casting magic spells on you. You're ignorant of everything, and you're trying to force some order on things. And so when you don't, in the absence of engineers, and you don't know why certain buildings fall down, you actually can agree with your neighbor that maybe you should bury your firstborn child into every post hole of this new building, which in fact took place. And it's the consequence of ignorance. And so the problem is, if you're only going to talk about this purified notion of sacrifice.
But it's a very strange consequence of ignorance, Sam.
It's the notion that we're in relationship to invisible others that can mistreat us based on our not having offered enough.
We are.
But not precisely those others.
Well, but we're in relationship to the invisible others who will judge us in the future.
Okay, you're changing the noun in important ways.
I know, but I'm also trying to understand, and I'm not trying to argue against the horror of child sacrifice.
No, I would never imagine you would.
I know, but I'm also trying to.
But my work would be much easier if you did that.
Yes, and the work of journalists as well. Although they've tried that pretty much anyways.
That's right.
So. Right, that would even be worse than enforced monogamy, hypothetically.
No doubt.
Yes. So see, let's say that I'm trying to give the devil his due, and I'm trying to understand from an evolutionary perspective, like a cognitive behavioral evolutionary perspective, let's say, why that particular set of ideas would emerge, and in many places, perhaps autonomously, or once having emerged, would spread like wildfire. It's like, because I'm not willing to only attribute it to ignorance. Now, we can attribute it to ignorance, no problem, man. But there's more going on there because it is a human universal. And there's all sorts of things that happen in nature as a consequence of biological and evolutionary processes that don't work out well for our current state of moral intuition, let's say.
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things, because I've been thinking about this sacrificial motif for a very long time, and trying to figure out what the hell's the idea here exactly. And so here's one way of thinking about it. If you give up something of value now, you can gain something of more value in the future. Okay, so let's think about that idea for a minute. So the first thing is, that's a hell of an idea.
Yeah,
that's delayed gratification.
Delayed gratification.
That's right. That's the discovery of the future as well. And so you might say, well, the notion of sacrifice is exactly the same thing as the discovery of the future. If we give up something we really value now, we can make a pact with the structure of existence itself such that better things will happen to us in the future. Now, now, what's weird about this, and it's hard to understand, is that it works. So when I talk to my students, for example, and I say, what did your parents sacrifice to send you to university? Many of them are children of first-generation immigrants. And so, man, they're on that story in a second, right? They know all sorts of things that their parents sacrificed. And they're delaying gratification in the present for a radically delayed return in the future. Now, you think, animals, generally speaking, they might act out the idea of delayed gratification as a consequence of running out their instincts, but they don't conceptualize it. It's not obvious that animals give up something they value right now in order to thrive in the future. There's an old story about how to catch a monkey. right? So you put a jar up with rocks in it, and you put little candies, and it's a narrow-necked jar. You put little candies on top of the rocks. You put a few candies in front of the jar. Then the monkey comes along and picks up the candies, puts his hand in the jar, grabs the candies, and can't get it out.
Yeah, I still don't know if this actually works on monkeys or if it's just a great story.
Well, I don't know. I don't know either. And I've heard various claims. But the point is, you can go pick up the monkey. He won't let go of the candies. Now, perhaps he would. But the issue is that it's not obvious that animals will forego an immediate gratification for a future gratification. Now,
I don't think that's right, actually. And I actually want to hold.
Well, the question is, will they do it consciously? They might act it out. They act it out. That's not the issue.
It's very hard to know if it's conscious because they won't respond to the questionnaires. But
I know. And obviously, the line between acting it out and starting to consciously represent it is a tenuous one. But what looks to me like what happened is that after we observed that people who were capable of delaying gratification sacrificed things that they valued in order to obtain a future goal, and it worked, that we started to codify that as a representation and then started to act it out. And so the story, and you'd say, well, that produced strange variants, but there's a reason for that too, as far as I can say. So imagine this. Imagine that there's a rule of thumb. Sacrificing what you find valuable now will ensure certain benefits in the future. Well, then the question becomes, how good could those future benefits be? And so that might be heavenly, let's say, in the archetypal extreme. And what's the ultimate sacrifice that you have to perform? And then I would say, well, the child sacrifice fits into that category. And so it's as if those ideas were pushed to the radical extreme. And you could say, well, that's a pathological extreme. It's like, well, it is a pathological extreme, but I think we also have to understand that some of the things that we've learned as we've evolved towards our current state of wisdom, such as it is that they were learned in a very bloody and catastrophic way. They were learned with incredible difficulty. And delay of gratification was certainly one of those, because it's a hell of a thing to learn when you're in conditions of privation.
Okay. Yeah, I think that the issue here for me is that you don't need a conception of, you don't need any kind of positive gloss on human sacrifice as a meme or as an archetype in order to form a coherent picture of the future that can motivate you. So delayed gratification is fully separable from a notion that it might ever be rational or good to sacrifice a child as an offering to an invisible other that doesn't exist.
But how do you know it's separable? Because that's the developmental history. As you said, the
so
sacrifices
even if
came first.
I think it is in fact historically separable, but let's just say it's not. Let's just say it's a matter of our origins. They're united. They're of a piece. It is the genetic fallacy to care about that origin. I mean, to say that that is the only path forward toward a notion of the future, given where we've come from, or that it's somehow necessary to venerate now, or that it's good that we took that path.
But we do venerate the idea of sacrifice now. But I would say that
I would say we do it to the detriment of our moral intuitions in the religious context. So, for instance, I think that the notion that Christianity is actually a cult of human sacrifice. Christianity is not a religion that repudiates human sacrifice. Christianity is a religion that says, actually, no, human sacrifice is necessary, and there was only one that, in fact, was necessary and effective, and that's the sacrifice of Jesus.